ain't gonna bring me back now. Come on, baby. I know you get to like it if we give it a chance now.
Some stories sound too wild to be true, like a rejected Hollywood script. What if I told you that one of the biggest hit songs in history was written by the most famous duo in music, then brutally rejected by a top producer? And then, this same song was saved on a whim when the songwriters had their teenage babysitter record the demo. A babysitter who wasn't even a professional singer. And what if that scratch demo, that test recording, went on to become a global #1 hit? It's unbelievable. But even more fascinating is the life this song lived after that moment. A life that violently contrasted with the fate of the voice that made it famous. We're talking about a song that went to the top of the charts 4 different times, hitting #1 in 3 separate decades. The 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, with 4 completely different artists. You had the original by Little Eva, the hard rock of Grand Funk Railroad, the pop of Kylie Minogue, and even a French version by Sylvie Vartan. Today, we're chronicling the truly bittersweet journey of the Loco-Motion and the fleeting, almost cruel fame of its original voice, Little Eva. To understand how a song achieves this kind of immortality, you have to go back to the machine that built it, the legendary Brill Building in New York. The Brill Building wasn't about art in the romantic sense. It was a music assembly line, a true hit factory. At the very heart of this factory were Gerry Goffin, who wrote the lyrics, and Carole King, a master of irresistible melodies. At the time, they were at the absolute peak of the mountain. They weren't just talented, they were prolific. They just delivered Will You Love Me Tomorrow for the Shirelles, which basically put them in charge of what American pop music sounded like. But sometimes, their golden touch came from some pretty strange ideas, and even Gerry Goffin's own insecurities. The idea for the Loco-Motion was born from this. Goffin had the concept for a dance craze song rattling around in his head. But he genuinely expected Carole King to shoot it down, thinking she'd find it too silly. He introduced the idea defensively, saying something like, "I have this idea and it's gonna sound stupid, but..." He knew that the biggest hits often came from the simplest, most infectious fads. But Carole King didn't think it was stupid at all. She saw the potential immediately and composed a melody that literally sounded like the rhythmic chugging of a steam train, giving the song its name and its entire theme. The pressure to deliver a dance hit was intense, driven by Don Kirshner at Alden Music. Kirshner was the ultimate gatekeeper, pushing his writers to create songs that kids understood, even if the adults didn't. The Loco-Motion was explicitly written for the singer Dee Sharp, intended as a slam-dunk submission for her label. It was a simple factory assignment, and this assignment leads us directly to our accidental star, Eva Boyd. Eva was a young teenager from North Carolina, the 10th of 16 children. After a visit to New York, she fell in love with the city's energy, quit school, and got a job as a maid. The coincidence that changed her life was that her sister-in-law knew Earl John McCrea, a member of the Cookies, who were a group of in-demand session singers. At the same time, Goffin and King, despite their booming careers, desperately needed help at home with their young daughter. Eva was recommended for a dual role, personal assistant, maid, and occasionally a backup singer for their demos. The contrast is brutal. She moved in with pop royalty, earning $35 a week to babysit and clean their apartment. Yet her voice was already being used on huge tracks of the era as a background vocalist. When it came time to record the demo for the Loco-Motion, they had the bright idea to just use the babysitter. But make no mistake, this was not some amateur, thrown-together recording. Because Eva's voice had that young, energetic quality they were looking for, they invested in making a super high-quality demo. This was a serious sales pitch. They brought in professional studio musicians and layered an incredible 5 saxophone overdubs onto the track, building a full, powerful sound. And this is where the story takes that unbelievable turn. They handed this incredible demo to the Cameo Parkway label. The producer, Bernie Lowe, barely let it play. After maybe 60 seconds, he pulled the needle off the acetate with a judgment that has gone down in history for its spectacular short-sightedness. I didn't hear the hook. He rejected one of the most infectious hooks in pop history on the spot. But Don Kirshner, upon hearing the demo back at his office, realized Lowe had made a monumental mistake. He declared the song a smash hit and decided to release it himself as the very first single on his brand new label, Dimension Records. Now, there's a charming legend that Eva created the dance moves while cleaning the house, but the truth is she was asked to record the song because of her powerful voice. However, the spontaneous, energetic way she moved while singing the track did become the basis for the official choreography that she would soon teach to the world. The magic was already captured in that original demo. They tried to re-record a more polished version for the official release, but they couldn't recapture the raw energy, so they just released the demo itself. The marketing team ran with her family nickname, Little Eva, shaved 2 years off her age for the press, and the success was immediate. In July 1962, the Loco-Motion was #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The world was dancing to a song recorded by Goffin and King's former babysitter. But this rapid success was also her undoing. Eva was immediately typecast as a dance-crazed singer, which severely limited her career opportunities. And now we have to talk about the painful financial injustice at the heart of this story. There's a long-standing rumor that she was paid only $50 for the recording. This is a little misleading, but the essence of the exploitation is deeply true. That $50 was actually her weekly salary, which they raised by $15 after she became a global star. The real problem was the contract structure. Little Eva was operating on a work-for-hire basis. This meant she never owned the rights to her recordings and never received any publishing royalties. Every time that song sold 1 million copies or played on the radio, the wealth flowed to the songwriters and publishers, while the person who owned the voice remained essentially an employee. It's devastating. By 1964, when the dance craze era ended, Eva was disillusioned and financially broke. In 1971, she gave up on the music industry entirely, returned to North Carolina, and lived in almost total obscurity for decades, working regular jobs. She was a mere footnote in her own legendary history. She was only rediscovered in the late 80s by the nostalgia circuit, which gave her a few final years of performing. But she passed away in 2003 without ever seeing the fortune her voice generated. The most poignant detail is that 5 years after her death, her grave was still unmarked. It took a donation campaign from fans to finally fund a proper headstone. Meanwhile, the Loco-Motion proved it was far from finished. It became one of the very few songs in history to hit #1 with 2 different artists. In 1974, the band Grand Funk Railroad released a raucous hard rock version. It started as a joke during a studio session, but it went straight to the top of the charts. Then, 30 years after the original, the song jumped into the MTV era with Kylie Minogue in 1988. Her version proved the song's structure worked as bubblegum pop just as well as it had as rock and roll. Add in Sylvie Vartan's French cover, and you have 4 #1 hits internationally. The Loco-Motion is a masterclass in pop music longevity, a song that went from a simple office assignment to a multi-generational cultural phenomenon. But ultimately, this story highlights the persistent, brutal dichotomy of the music business, the universal joy and massive wealth a song can generate, contrasted with the personal devastation faced by the voice that brought it to life. Little Eva's voice lives on forever on radios and playlists, but her struggle is a somber reminder of the high price so many foundational artists paid to build the soundtrack of our lives. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more deep dives into music history. See you next time.